Shabbat Shalom, my friends. On March 7th, we will celebrate Purim. Yay! If we have ever needed a day in which we are commanded to set aside all of our fears and all of our concerns, well, I guess March 7th cannot come soon enough. Our Sedra is TETZAVEH, beginning with Exodus 27:20. But there is an additional section of Torah that will be read this Shabbat morning. Deuteronomy 25:17-19. Now, we're reading TETZAVEH because it's the next Sedra up. That's what comes. We're reading it. That's fine. But the Deuteronomy passage is read every Shabbat morning that immediately precedes Purim. Listen to what the special passage from Deuteronomy actually says. Remember, the Hebrew word ZACHOR. Remember, ZACHOR, what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt. How, undeterred by the fear of God, Amalek surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary, and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Therefore, when the eternal your God grants you safety from all of your enemies around you in the land that the eternal your God is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven. Blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven. Zachor al tishkach. Remember, don't forget. In an act of absolute brutality, Amalek attacked the Israelites as they were fleeing Egypt. And our passage states that when we are safely in our own land, we should remember what Amalek did to us. And we should utterly blot out, read, exterminate this people. Thus is vengeance elevated to be a sacred mitzvah, even in a scroll that warns us against holding on to our grudges. Torah says that. We can only assume that this deeply troubling passage was originally focused narrowly on one event in our ancient past. We could assume that. But that assumption is wrong. Somehow, Amalek never gets exterminated. The pagan prophet Balaam references Amalek as an evil that must be destroyed. King Saul, the first Jewish king, was ordered to wipe out Amalek. He failed to do so, and God took the throne from him. Much later on, Haman of the Purim story, is described as being a descendant of Amalek. Haman was destroyed, but Amalek lingered on. Scholars of Chassidut place Amalek at the very pinnacle of evil because they had a chance to witness God's saving power, but they intentionally rebelled. Our perspective. So what's happened is Amalek has become much more than just a people. It has become a typology. Rebels against God are all Amalek, no matter what their DNA happens to say. But more, the evil that was Amalek not only was not wiped out then, but it continued to spread throughout humankind like a plague. So it became impossible to kill every Amalek-like person. Some of our teachers have said that fragments of the Amalek infection reside in far too many of us. It must be constantly battled, though we have to admit, exterminating everybody just doesn't seem like a workable plan. The battle against the external physical Amalek and that other metaphorical Amalek that seeks us to abandon God is a perpetual battle confronting the Jews, one which we must never lose. The Chabad website points out that Amalek became the catch-all term for all that Jews have hated or feared or despised. Amalek, for example, is the cynical person who refuses to believe. Amalek, an example, is someone who lacks all empathy. That's an Amalek. So when the Jews of Europe began to speak against Hitler, they coded their comments by speaking of the existential threat posed by Amalek. The same technique was used by some Jews in Russia, referring to the leadership of what was then the Soviet Union, Amalek. Purim Day, 1994. The Jewish terrorist Baruch Goldstein carried out a brutal slaughter of Arabs when he entered a room in the Cave of the Patriarchs near Hebron, a place that was serving as a mosque. 800 Muslim worshippers were present. Goldstein murdered 29 of them before he was beaten to death. Why on Purim? Why Palestinian Arabs? Because Baruch Goldstein saw Palestinians as Amalek, a people that we are told must be annihilated. As it happens, just a few days before, Goldstein was in synagogue in Kiryat Arba when the ZACHOR passage of Deuteronomy was read. Dr. Goldstein must have listened very intently. There's no need to mention here that Goldstein was a follower of Rabbi Meir Kahane, a radical racist hater of everything that he could label as Amalek. Nor is there any need to mention that a photo of Goldstein was prominently featured in the audit office of Itamar Ben-Gvir when he became a minister in the current Israeli government, Minister of National Security. That photo disappeared. It seems that the Torah was able to hold up the nurturing of an endless hatred and the acceptability of carrying out acts of vengeance as a mitzvah. Rambam, Maimonides, described revenge in the most negative of terms. He even praised a statement in the Psalms, a statement attributed to King David, that praises those who do not repay evil with evil. But of course, Rambam knew very well that on his deathbed, King David gave to his son and successor Solomon a list of those who had wronged David and whom Solomon as king, was instructed to severely punish. It seems that the psalmist never forgot those who had injured him. Ramban later on would praise those who could erase all yearning for revenge from their heart. Great Ramban, but such people are hard to find. There is a cycle of violence in Israel and the occupied territories today that is profoundly troubling to many of us. Israeli troops break up a terrorist cell. Palestinians respond with acts of terror. 2 Israeli brothers were murdered. Far-right settlers then went on a rampage against a Palestinian village. Dozens of houses and cars were torched. There was at least one death. A member of Israel's governing coalition praised the settler response. A U.S. State Department official called those comments, quote, repugnant, irresponsible, and disgusting. My friends have referred to what happened in that Palestinian village as a Jewish pogrom. Vicious assaults carried out with the approval of the government. Deuteronomy, the passage ZACHOR, is being read this Shabbat morning. Revenge is begetting revenge in the Middle East. Isn't it time to do the unthinkable and remove the reading of the Deuteronomy passage in connection every year with Purim? Isn't it time to call out acts of revenge as simply unacceptable? Isn't it time to eat our Hamantaschen, wave our noisemakers, and to deny revenge its sacred status? Shabbat Shalom. Have a joyous Purim. I don't like poppy seed in the Hamantaschen. See you next week.